This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening everyone and welcome to Southern Cross News. Premier Will Hodgman is facing pressure to reveal when his primary industries minister began a relationship with the boss of one of her departments. Sarah Courtney has stood down while investigations begin into possible breaches of conduct and conflict of interest. The revelations led to a fiery question time as Labor and the Greens demanded answers.
Day 2 of a new migraine for the government. Embattled Primary Industries Minister Sarah Courtney sitting on the backbench as Labor asked the question that's rocked state parliament.
When did the personal relationship between the former minister and her department secretary begin?
As has been said, it is a recent thing. The inquiry will determine whether or not any decisions have been made in that time and whether or not there has been any breach, Madam Speaker.
Questions in Parliament over whether the Dipipwi boss, Dr John Whittington, made extra trips to Launceston, where Ms Courtney is based.
Can you confirm that Dr Whittington has, over the past month, informed staff of his department that he would be intending to spend 2 days a week in Launceston?
Trips possibly explained as department staff relocate to the Northern Office. But all of that will fall under the Code of Conduct investigation. And there's no shortage of decisions by the Minister to fall under the microscope.
Fish farm pens in Norfolk Bay, decisions around the deaths of 16 polo ponies on the Spirit of Tasmania, an investigation that's still ongoing.
Labor's accused the Premier of dodging the date on when the relationship began.
It is odd that the Premier chose not to disclose it, and I think that's because the Premier made it clear today that he would be identifying those areas that should be investigated.
The codes of conduct applicable to the Minister and her head of agency require that they both avoid conflicts of interest and then disclose them. In this case, by starting this relationship, they've created the conflict.
Concerns too, the chaos at the top could trickle down to department operations. The Premier has pledged a swift response.
Matters that have been determined and decided upon by Minister Courtney will be independently assessed and reviewed, appropriately so.
The big question now is how long that investigation will take. Sean McComish, Southern Cross News.
The family of a man killed by a falling tree branch has spoken of its loss in the closing day of a coronial inquest. A simple trip to the supermarket ended in Brendan Smith's death and changed the family's life forever. But despite that loss, his wife expressed gratitude today for new plans to manage dangerous roadside trees.
Brendan Smith's family reaching the end of 3 gruelling days of coronial inquest hearings.
I'm so grateful to the coroner's office and all of the council. They've worked tirelessly.
The coroner looking into the death of Mr Smith. The 43-year-old was killed in February 2014 when a tree fell on his car on the Channel Highway at Margate. His wife taking to the stand today to detail the impact of her family's loss. She spoke of a man who loved fishing trips with his then 14-year-old son Max and adored his 10-year-old daughter Isabel. She said on that fateful day, her husband left for the supermarket. At the last minute, she told her son to stay home. He said, "I'll see you in around 40 minutes. And then our lives changed. We had plans. We had so many plans. That was never going to happen anymore."
He was incredible. He wasn't like anyone else. And I know everyone says that, but it's the truth. And yeah, he didn't need a weapon, he was one.
The inquest had heard there were safety concerns about this stand of trees, raised in 2000 and 2003. But due to political pressure, they weren't all cut down. Today, the now General Manager of State Roads gave evidence, saying despite the safety concerns, from my review and search of records, I couldn't find evidence of a structured management regime for the trees. He told Coroner Olivia McTaggart a new risk-based tree management framework has been developed in direct response to this incident. He said there have already been unsafe trees identified and cut down despite community opposition, telling the court we wouldn't choose to compromise safety for a tree.
I cried. I was so relieved. I was so relieved that someone has finally you know, put in place something so important that can, you know, obviously stop any of this sort of thing happening again.
In closing this week's hearings, the coroner praised the courage of Mr Smith's family, saying she hopes this process brings them some closure. The family walking from court today in each other's arms as they await the official findings, likely by the end of the year. Michael Breen, Southern Cross News.
The Department of Parks and Wildlife is urgently calling for the public's assistance to help with an investigation into the deaths of 58 penguins. The animals were found at Low Head earlier this week and are believed to have been killed by a dog. And a warning, this story may distress some viewers. Louise HEDGER has our report.
It's here at the Low Head Conservation Area where the carcasses of 58 fairy penguins were found earlier this week. De Pipui says it was alerted to the deaths by a member of the public. Staff then came here and collected the bodies for a post-mortem. That investigation determined most of the birds were most likely to have been killed by a dog. BirdLife Tasmania says it's the 5th dog attack at a penguin population this year, with this picture showing another penguin which had been recently mauled at Bicheno.
We need to make sure that if the owners of the dog or dogs that are involved are identified, that they are prosecuted.
The Greens calling for CCTV to be installed in this conservation area, with this the second recent attack on the same population.
Put at significant nesting sites, because we can't keep being in a situation where every month or two we're hearing another story about these penguins being killed.
Wildlife in Tasmania is suffering from a range of threats, and anything that we can do to minimise or remove the threats to these penguins is certainly open for discussion.
The investigation into these deaths is ongoing, but anyone with information is urged to contact De Pipui's Wildlife Operations Branch or Crime Stoppers.
This loss of 58 breeding birds at the start of the breeding season is going to take years, if not decades, for the colony to recover.
While the exact circumstances of this incident are still unclear, De Pipui is urging the public to remain responsible for their dogs at all times, using this as an example of the destruction that can be caused.
A 4-year-old has been treated for smoke inhalation after a fire broke out at a house in Mowbray this morning. 3 tankers were called to the home on Caswell Street, but the blaze had been extinguished by the occupant upon arrival. Firefighters say the incident was accidental. The exact cause of the blaze is not known at this stage. Authorities are reminding people to keep matches and lighters away from children. Meanwhile, one person has been transported to hospital after being involved in this crash on the southern outlet near Launceston this afternoon. It's understood the vehicle rolled into the rivulet. Investigations are continuing into the circumstances surrounding the incident. And police have arrested and charged a 17-year-old girl who allegedly stole nearly $3,000 worth of goods from businesses in Launceston. Items including perfume, clothing, purses and mobile phone cases were seized by authorities following a search yesterday. Tasmania Police says a new task force is cracking down on stealing.
In the past 7 weeks, we've had several instances where we have charged people with more than $2,000 worth of stolen property.
It follows a separate incident on the weekend where 4 people were arrested for stealing $4,000 worth of goods from at least 10 businesses. New plans for the Macquarie Point redevelopment are stirring debate. Senior Mona figure Lee Carmichael is criticising the direction of the project, saying it's being altered to include apartment blocks. Residential development has been moved forward to the first stage, which could include an Antarctic and science precinct, cultural and open spaces.
What I like about housing being up front is firstly it does help the housing issue we have in Hobart, and secondly it also makes sure that the site is active across the course of the day. And what we don't want to see is the site stopping at 5:30.
It's a vision for the important site that's the government's vision by consulting and working together with the community.
The government says Mona's own plans for the site included residential development. Lee Carmichael was unavailable for interview. A Tasmanian cat has found itself at the centre of a diplomatic debacle. A photo of the tabby dressed as the Cookie Monster was mistakenly sent out by the US Embassy on an email, inviting dignitaries to a pyjama party. Tonight we let the cat out of the bag as we meet the Tasmanian owner of the now famous feline.
Far from being a scaredy cat, this celebrity kitten is lapping up the love after its photo in a Cookie Monster outfit was accidentally sent out on an email by none other than the US Embassy, the mistake making headlines around the globe.
So the US Embassy in Canberra, Australia had to do a little apologising today. The email, titled "Meeting," featured this picture of a cat wearing Cookie Monster pajamas holding a plate of chocolate chip cookies. The caption read, "Cat Pajama Jam."
Someone's looking at cat photos when they're meant to be working, so someone's been called out.
The stuff-up even had New Zealand's US Embassy in stitches. But the cat at the centre of it all doesn't mind the spotlight. Joey's used to a bit of fame. He has a big social media following, where the feline features in all sorts of fashion. It's a mystery how the Cookie Monster photo made its way onto the Embassy's official email.
There's a bit of jealousy in the house from the other pets, but they'll get over it.
It's best not to bring it up.
How do you find all this, mate?
Far from being a catastrophe, the Americans saw the funny side.
In a light-hearted apology, the embassy called the email a training error. I find that really funny.
And a surreal shot to superstardom for Joey.
You just can't believe he's gone so far. He's got no idea.
Tom Johnson, Southern Cross News.
35 people will now officially call Tasmania home after being sworn in at a citizenship ceremony. The new residents from countries such as Bhutan, England, Vietnam and Nepal were warmly welcomed by the Mayor and members of the community.
What I love when I come here is not just the smiles on the faces of our new citizens, but also to see the families and the friends that are supporting them already from our community.
It's been a long time coming for one of the new citizens who's already lived in the state for 61 years. The state government is promising more beds are on the way as part of its $104 million mental health spend. Health Minister Michael Ferguson says work is on track to finish the rebuild of the Peacock Centre by 2020 and the St John's Park facility by 2021.
We've got a very clear time frame for opening 27 additional beds in southern Tasmania. We know that it's a pressure point. We are acting.
It comes as the government works to improve the Royal Hobart Hospital redevelopment to deal with more demand. A Tasmanian who has lived in the depths of poverty and despair is calling on others to seek the help that's available. He's speaking out as part of Anti-Poverty Week as support organisations work to rally around those suffering.
Simon Henstridge has experienced rock bottom after dealing with drug addiction and mental health issues.
I've been homeless on and off for the last 20 odd years. I was ward of the state, long story short.
He hopes his story, told during Anti-Poverty Week, will act as a catalyst for others to reach out and seek help.
People just need to you know, take that first step and build those bridges, I guess, again, and yeah, start communicating.
Alarmingly, there are 74,000 Tasmanians known to be living in poverty right now. Of them, 7,500 are homeless or living on its brink. An event held in Launceston today highlighting the issues and aiming to help those struggling.
We see families making really hard decisions. Do they buy the medication they need or do they put food on the table? Do they pay the power bill or do they pay the rent?
Support services say while the state's in the midst of an economic boom, many Tasmanians aren't reaping the rewards. The cycle of disadvantage playing a huge role. Organisations calling for early intervention to break it and an effective roundtable discussion to find a viable solution.
Because by the time kids are at year 10, if they're dropping out, it's too late, it's really hard to catch them.
Not only to find the immediate solution, but how can we find a long-term solution?
Anti-Poverty Week runs until Saturday. Louise HEDGER, Southern Cross News.
Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The Australian share market has closed more than 1% higher for the first time in 4 months, buoyed by banking stocks after a surge on Wall Street overnight. The ASX 200 index has risen by 69.2 points. A short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 71 US cents and 80.04 Japanese yen.
Tasmania has taken the Bulls by the horns on day 2 of the Sheffield Shield. After posting a total of 355, the Tigers have Queensland at 5 for 72.
Starting the day at 5 for 257, the Tigers needed to lift the runs on the sluggish Gabba wicket, and Matthew Wade made it happen, knocking an unbeaten 72 off 137 balls to put the Tigers in a strong position. He had limited support from the lower order, Jackson Bird the best of the bunch, hitting a fine 30 off just 21 balls. Simon Malenko and Tom Rogers were out in the teens, while tail-enders Sam Rainbird and Gabe Bell went for ducks. With an innings total of 355, Gabe Bell got to work, knocking over the stump of Sam Stuloff for 11, followed by Joe Burns for a duck. It was then Sam Rainbird's turn, taking Sam Haslett for 1. The positive start has the Tigers licking their lips at the thought of getting one back on the Bulls after last year's Shield final defeat.
Good evening. A drop in temperatures from the past couple of days, but still above average today. Hobart 19, Launceston 18, Burnie and Devonport 17. 22 at Strawn, the warmest, as showers fell over most of the state. The best fall overnight was 8 millimetres at City of Melbourne Bay, which is just north of Grassy on King Island. Today, Tombs Lake recorded 18 millimetres. St Helens and Friendly Beaches 21 degrees, King Island 19, Ouse and Flinders Island 18, Low Head 15 degrees. A thick band of middle and high cloud moved over the state today. Lower cloud spiralled around a low pressure zone to our northwest. High cloud extends northwards along coastal areas of the eastern states as well. Isolated thunderstorms over the top end. Tomorrow, the low over our region weakens. A series of troughs runs up the east coast before heading inland through central Queensland and the Territory. A high sits over central Australia. A low and trough move over WA. Light and variable winds over the west and south of the state, northeast and northwesterlies to 20 knots for other waters, swells to 3 metres in the south. For Hobart tomorrow, a few showers, 22 the top, 22 for Cygnet, maybe a storm, possible storm for New Norfolk as well on 23 degrees. For Launceston, showers easing, 20 the top, 18 the high for Devonport with showers easing, a shower or two developing for Campbelltown and 21. Burnie tomorrow and a shower or two early in the day mostly, 18 the top, 19 the high for Strawn, 17 for Smithton with showers to start the day. A shower or two for St Helens and 21 degrees, 22 for Swansea, Fingal an afternoon shower and 21. There's the UV into the high range for tomorrow. On Friday, morning showers over the north and west, mainly fine elsewhere, maybe a late shower over the northwest. Fine and partly cloudy in the east and south on Saturday, early showers over the north and west. And on Sunday, mainly fine with northwest to westerlies across the state. Showers and a possible storm in Perth tomorrow, partly cloudy over Adelaide. Showers for Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney and Brisbane. And here are the current conditions, and Jackson Thurlow, very welcome at the Swans. Joe, he's on holidays in Queensland at the moment, but I'll have a few words with him before the season starts.
Of course you will. All the advice he needs. Thanks for that, Murph. That's all from the news team. See you a little later.